my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the planet. It typically doesn't have anything to do whatsoever with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid. Thank you for joining me here for a beautiful fall-like midday. Isn't this just gorgeous back here? I'm setting off to the side of the view here so you can watch for him, her, it, or they back there. I've had some people blowing me up in the comment section here recently for using those multiple pronouns, saying, as soon as I heard the pronouns, I was out, you woke fool. Listen, brah, you're clearly new to this channel. I started that. The woke movement stole that from me. The longtime viewers can confirm that. I started using those terms back in 2018 because people were giving me hell about using the term Bigfoot Sasquatch. And the reason that I used that term is because I didn't know what him, her, it, or they wanted to be referred to as, Bigfoot or Sasquatch. So out of respect for this mythical creature that may or may not exist and may or may not live in the woods behind my very house, I started using him, her, it, or they, and I used Bigfoot and Sasquatch to combine Bigfoot, Sasquatch. That's how it all got started. Yeah, they stole that idea from me, brah. So don't be hating when you don't know the facts, Jack. So anyway, watch for movement. I'm going to share some stories with you here today. It's really interesting. Had a gentleman come by the house the tail end of last week to do some repairs. That's what happens when your house is 130-something years old. 122 years, I think. Yeah, it's 122 years old. You're always having repairs done. And had a lot in common with this older gentleman. It was like I met my own doppelganger that's 20 years older than me. And turns out, he asked me, he says, your wife Filipina? Because my beautiful bride Dearly, a.k.a. Giggly Girl, was sitting on the porch. I said, yeah, she is. He said, well, I can tell, but, wanted to ask. It turns out his girlfriend is Filipina, and he was recently in Manila, Philippines, visiting her just last month. He's going back next month. We've decided to spend Christmas over there this year. So, not the whole winter. We've got other issues for the next few years we've got to deal with. It's called having a kid in high school and wants to be on the football team and the basketball team, and so you can't live overseas during the crap months of the year. But hey, we're embracing that, clinging on to that childhood for as long as it lasts, because any of you who have kids know it doesn't last forever. It goes by like that. So our time will come when we can go back and forth as frequently as we please. But my point of that is, I ended up meeting a wonderful gentleman, had a wonderful 2 hours long talk about life in the Philippines versus life here, the mentality, the mindset differences. And it just turns out, and I'll give you a shout out. What's up, Danny? That's enough information. No last name's required. He's a huge Bigfoot Sasquatch buff. And it's funny, he kept saying, I look familiar. And I get that all the time. And I usually play dumb. But he was trying to figure out where he saw me. I said, you've seen me on social media. And I kind of shared with him who I was, what I did. And it hit him. He's like, yeah. He watches me on YouTube. He just had no clue he was sitting there with me on the front porch. In June, we had 1.1 billion views total on social media. There are 14 billion people in the world. I just heard that tree knock. They're saying, get on with the story. So the fact is, 1 out of 7 people on Earth see me monthly. Facebook has 3 billion users. 1 out of 3 Facebook users see me monthly. But then, of course, if you're into all things Bigfoot Sasquatch, you've been seeing me for years. So we really hit it off, and I was just reminded of some stories. I'm going to share one with you today. It's the story, the true, honest-to-God true story that actually inspired the novel Isle of Kapre, written by this guy when he actually used to go to barbers. It's about the Kapre, which is the Philippines version of the North American Bigfoot Sasquatch. The majority of this is fact, based upon my experiences of living there for 6 freaking years without even coming home. I've spent a total of 8 years there, off and on. It's a wonderful story, and I thought, the story behind the story is what's really cool. And it's in Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 6. It's story number 4. And I'm going to go to it directly from Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Anthology 1, which is volumes 1 through 10 combined. Both of these books, by the way, are available in print or Kindle on Amazon, or you can get autographed copies from me directly from our Etsy store. The links for those are in the description box below. And FYI, one last shameless self-promotion. Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 16 is in the works. I wrote a couple thousand words in that this morning. Hope to have it out at some point in October. So if you've got those Bigfoot Sasquatch experience stories or from somebody you know, you want to share them with us, email them to us. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. You must give us your permission to use the stories as we wish, or we won't. And if you want to remain anonymous, let us know. We won't use your name if we read your story here on the channel. But if you don't mind, let us know, and we'll tell people who you are. But this is a story called In the Beginning. Now, as I read it, right on cue, we had another distant knock. Watch for him, her, it, or they back here. You never know who or what may or may not appear in the background of any of these videos. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Wrong book. This is the book of Bigfoot Sasquatch. The 6th in this series, actually. But before there was Bigfoot Sasquatch, there was Kapre. That's how you pronounce it. I've had people in the Philippines tell me, I should not have the right to write the book about the Kapre because I cannot even pronounce it. Dude, I can't roll my tongue. I don't have any Spanish blood in me. I'm as white as you can get. I ate mashed potatoes last night with dinner. Come on, brah. Give me a break. So forgive me when I say Kapre. I can't roll my tongue. And it's not about which came first, the chicken or the egg, the Bigfoot Sasquatch or the Kapre. Let me explain. I tell you this story, one I've told more than once on our YouTube channel, Homesteading Off the Grid, because I want it preserved in writing. When I began this venture, this Bigfoot Sasquatch Files venture, I had no idea it would become a venture. Honestly, I thought I'd merely be wasting more time spilling out more of my talents onto the page, only to have it fall on deaf ears, rather no ears. I've gotten too many carts before the horse here, so let me move them out of the way one by one. Firstly, I've worked in social media for more than a decade, going on 2 decades now. This story is probably 6 years old. And what I can tell you about the folks who spend a lot of time on social media and who comment on posts often are often fake. They're bored, they have nothing better to do with their time, and they piss endless hours of their days away scrolling. Sadly, this is like a major portion of our population that's doing this now, folks. A good number of them use fake profiles so they can troll, or, this is the true minority, simply remain anonymous, and if they're not trolling maliciously, I see no harm in this. It's actually a good idea for many reasons. My point here, in regard to the fakeness at least, is that many of the comments they leave are left merely so they can look good. They are not sincere. At least this is what I thought. Before my beautiful bride Dearly, who we know as Giggly Girl on YouTube, because that's what she does, she giggles incessantly, and it's quite contagious. But before we were successful on YouTube, we had success for a number of years on Fakebook. Most of you will know this social media platform is Facebook, but we've come to call it Fakebook because it's as fake as it gets. From the users, which I described above, to the founder and owner, Mark Zuckerberg, who's all about promoting privacy and ethics until someone like China waves some money in front of his face, at which time he waives the ethics he never had in the first place and sells China all of his Facebook users' private information. This is old news, right? Can't believe anybody trusts that guy. I sure as hell don't. I mean, I use the platform and we're killing it over there right now, like big time. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled the rug out from under us tomorrow. He's done it many times. Continuing with the story. So for many years while we worked on Fakebook, and after I'd publish a book and subscribers on our pages would shout, if you make this book available in print, I'll buy a copy. I bought this hook, line, and sinker, and as hundreds of people said this, and after making my books available in print, I might sell 4 or 5 copies. The way the math actually worked was that I would sell nearly 100 e-copies of my books for every single print copy. This is true, folks, and these numbers are still there. But I would buy the lies, the fakeness, hook, line, and sinker, and go through the extra efforts and back then and extra costs associated with making my books available in print, only to be duped time after time after time. So I eventually stopped. But not so with our YouTube audience. I'd not made any of my new books available in print for years by the time we became successful on YouTube after having left Fakebook. Once again, however, the commenters began clamoring. If you'd write a book about Bigfoot Sasquatch and make it available in print, we'd buy it. I ignored this for more than a year and a half, but after hearing it so much and for so long, I finally decided to test the waters again for the first time in years, and man, am I glad I did. This is a big kudos, I guess, to our YouTube followers. Kudos to you folks watching right now. These folks are not fake like all those fake book bastards. I was completely floored when, as a test, I put together a novella-length collection of short stories for Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 1 and made it available in print, and saw that our YouTube followers were actually putting their money where their mouths are. I mean, to put it bluntly, this whole Bigfoot Sasquatch Files venture, as I'm not referring to it, has given my family and me a second income stream that compares with our YouTube revenues. That was never the objective. We'd never even considered it as a goal. But we're flabbergasted that it's happened, and you'd better believe I plan on hanging on to this tiger's tail for quite some time to come. And not out of greed. We know enough about social media platforms to know that they may view you as one of their darlings one day, but should the winds of what's politically correct or socially couth or not change, they have no problem killing their darlings. So having an active, profitable plan B in place is a nice thing, and it's brought us quite a bit of peace of mind. That's why I diversify. People often ask me, what do I do? I write, I create social media content, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a Facebooker, I do Amazon affiliate marketing. I'm sponsored by a dozen different corporate sponsors where I showcase the videos on here. Passive investments like investment income, all these things. Man, I'm going down a different road, but people feel so secure when they have a job. I've never felt secure with a job because that's one income source. And you can go into your job any day of the week and be told you no longer have that job. Then what? Well, if we get kicked off of Facebook, we still have YouTube and the publishing and the affiliate marketing and the sponsors and vice versa. You can take any one of those things away, we still got a dozen different income streams. That's the only way I feel you can be, financially secure. Have no debt, which we don't. The house will be paid off in a matter of months. It's the only thing remaining. Live below your means and have multiple streams of income. I mean, but whatever. Everybody's like, oh, job. Got to have a good job. Got to have benefits. Don't work when you need them anyway. You know what JOB stands for? J-O-B. That's an acronym, and it stands for just over broke. It's all about that carrot. It's all about your employer giving you just enough to where you almost get by. And you have to sometimes buy groceries or get gas on credit cards and then make minimum payments on that garbage. Then you're in that game for life. But they dangle that carrot. Oh, you stay with us, we're going to give you this promotion. You stay with us, this is going to get better. Blah, 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 blah. People believe that shit. And the next thing you know, 30 years have passed. They're old. They can barely move. They're still broke. And they're too old to go to that job anymore. They just can't get up. Oh, it's terrible. That story is scarier than anything I've ever written in a book. Let me get on with this one. All right, besides, and as I've said on our channel over and over and over, when you do what you love, which I love all 20 of my sources of income, I love doing it all, you'll never work a day in your life. And as I absolutely, profoundly, and as much as I love anything else in life except my wife and our son, I love writing. It's my mistress. I can tell her anything and she loves to listen and she doesn't judge. She appreciates my honesty and she doesn't care about the occasional effing bad words. There are some effing bad words in these books, people. If you get some, just be warned. She doesn't tell me Jesus is coming to judge me first and some of that other stupid shit the vertically challenged individuals who live under bridges of the world constantly tell me on social media. She simply listens and she accepts. Okay, with that went a little overboard, but my point is our YouTube users are real, so as much for myself and my love of my mistress writing, these Bigfoot Sasquatch Files collections will continue. And I'm happy that after a 3.5 year long hiatus, we're getting right back into it with Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 16. Hopefully out by October. Now, the next cart in front of the horse, the Kapre. I'm getting to it. Now that I know these stories are being preserved in print, the reason for my recently completed rant, and I think I put a side rant in there too about how much jobs suck and they're not safe. I want to get to my story of my night with the Kapre on paper. For you see, it was the experience which I will now describe for the first time in print that would lead to the creation of my novel, Isle of Kapre. It's a great book, great read if you haven't read it. And I do believe opened the door, if not a portal, or a slip in the veil on our property in Virginia years later that would allow for the entire Bigfoot Sasquatch stuff we have going on, potentially, anyway. Trust me, it'll all make sense by the end. Boy, I do ramble, don't I? Even when I write, I can't write without rambling. Dang, man. I must have been an English teacher's nightmare. No wonder they told me I would never be successful as a writer, to give it up, go get a real job. Oh my gosh, and look who's the guy that is like a best-selling author and a worldwide, international, award-winning journalist. Gee, go figure. Not those old English professors that told me I sucked and to not do it. No. What do they say? Those who can do, those who can't teach. Those who can't teach, teach college. To say that my beginning with the potential Bigfoot Sasquatch only dates back to the events I'm about to describe, events that took place on a white sandy beach in Southeast Asia, rather than the rugged hemlock and giant western cedar-studded Cascade Mountains of the Pacific Northwest, would be a lie. My beginning would actually start with a fascination with all things cryptic, paranormal, horrific, and out of this world in childhood that I directly correlate to my mother's decision to allow me to watch the movie The Exorcist when I was 4 years old. Since that dreaded night of terror, I became a firm believer in all things that could not be seen with the naked eye, be it demonic possession or large, hairy man-like beasts roaming the forests of the world. But I'll take you to that white sandy beach of Mindanao, the southernmost island of the Philippines, an island riddled with mysteries and terrorist organizations. I'm telling you, if you haven't read Isle of Kapre, you don't know what your supercalifragilisticexpialidocious fiction based on fact is all about. Where'd that even come from? In order to relate this particular tale of all things Bigfoot Sasquatch, well, at least all things closely related to Bigfoot Sasquatch, as in first cousins, perhaps, and you'll understand this soon too. Because this is the tale of my first up-close and personal experience with potentially one of these amazing creatures that may or may not even exist. Hear that tree knock? Brah? So, to give you the quick backstory in a paragraph or less, the year was 2011, and I'd recently returned to the Philippines after unsuccessfully securing proper employment in the U.S. I would spend the next 4 years straight there after having gone back and forth for several months at a time in each place for the previous 2 years. I had a 9-month-old son there, Daniel, and a beautiful soulmate, Dearly, and it would be a long, hard 4 years of work in the realm of literature and social media, creating something out of nothing in order to get home, the U.S., and be able to afford to live here. That's how I got here. A lot of people are like, oh, you got lucky. Oh, you posted some stupid video on the internet and got lucky. Now you don't have to work. Bruh, I'll tell you what, if most folks would have done the work I did while we couldn't even afford to eat, while I was stuck in a hut with no electricity or running water in the leak roof for 4 years, let me tell you, you take that word luck out of your vocabulary, bruh. During my first month back in the Philippines full-time, Dearly and I got her Aunt Marissa to keep our son for a night so we could take a fisherman's boat to a small island a couple miles off the coast of Mindanao in order to spend the night at a private resort. And don't think that's anything fancy. As I described in the previous paragraph, we were broke. But for $2 you could sleep in a bamboo shack without amenities pretty much anywhere on the beaches of the Philippines. And as long as it was a place away from where you usually stayed, it felt like a vacay. We'd gotten to the other island late, as in an hour before dark, and the place where we wanted to stay had no vacancies, so we had to keep going up the beach. Wow, that was a loud thunderous tree knock. So I had to keep going up the beach until we found a place. We would soon be facing a very uncomfortable dilemma as the last boat to head back to Mindanao had already left for the evening. We were facing being stuck on this small island with no place to go. Fortunately, just before nightfall, which comes at 5:30 p.m. in the Philippines, 365 days a year as they're only 7 degrees above the equator, we reached what seemed to be the end of the rocky, upward sloping road we'd been traveling by way of a rickety old tricycle, a motor car attached to the side of a moped, and there was a little old woman closing and locking a gate to a property on the side of the road, getting ready to go home for the evening. It would literally be dark in about 10 minutes. Dearly jumped off the tricycle and ran to the old woman and asked her if we could rent a hut for the night. The woman explained that their huts were only available for day rental and that no one ever spent the night at this resort, which lay at beach level about 200 yards down a rocky trail. Dearly explained that we had nowhere else to stay, and the woman then explained to Dearly that the place was haunted. Many aswang, I heard her say. I didn't speak the Visayan language fluently yet, though I would in time, but I knew what aswang meant. It meant paranormal. Cool, I said, jumping off the tricycle myself now and running over to the old woman. The old woman begged and begged us not to stay at the haunted resort, but I insisted. When I offered her 200 pesos, roughly $4, her eyes grew big and she unlocked the gate and told us to take any hut that we wanted. However, she said she would be locking us in for the night and that a guard would be showing up soon. He should have been there by then, but finding anyone in the Philippines who's ever on time is like finding a needle in a haystack, and that he would be the only one around for 1 mile. This I know now, but I did not know at the time. Should have let me know how scared the locals were of this location. I mean, if you see 10 square meters of free space in the Philippines, you'd better store the spot to memory, because within minutes they'll have a dozen plywood shacks built on it with 50 people living there. And this is said with no disrespect. The place is severely overpopulated. Roughly 110 million people are living on a total land space only half the size of the state of Texas in the Philippines. So apparently whatever made that knock earlier just took several large steps closer to us. Keep watching. At any rate, Darrell and I entered the resort, again a term being used very loosely here. We're locked in by the old woman, and we made our way down to the beach, each of us carrying a backpack. We'd brought only the bare essentials, food enough for both of us, and booze enough for me. There's another tree knock, which would have been the equivalent of booze for enough for 3 people. I drank heavily back in those days, and I was still drinking quite heavily at the time. Yeah, see, told you. We settled into the farthest hut from the main hut on the beach, which was obviously used as an office. Though it was now dark, the moon was full, the sky was cloudless, and we could see as clearly as if it were day. We enjoyed a late dinner of rice and chicken. It wasn't cold because it was 90 degrees, but it wasn't nice and hot either. And then we spent time walking up and down the beach, me carrying a serving tray in one hand with a Filipino candle on it, and my glass of Tanduay rum and Coke in the other. We had no ice, but the booze had a high alcohol content, so it didn't matter. I was more concerned with effectiveness than pleasantness. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Filipino candle is, let me explain. You simply take a small jar or a glass, and you fill it about halfway with sand. Then you simply pour enough cooking oil into the glass to meet the top of the sand. It will look like mush. Then you take a toothpick and you wrap it with a cotton ball by stabbing the toothpick into the ball and then carefully pulling the cotton down over the toothpick, covering it entirely. Next, stick this cotton-covered toothpick into the mushy oil-soaked sand in the jar of the glass. Wait only a couple of minutes and the oil will entirely soak up and coat all of the cotton. You then light the top of the cotton-covered toothpick, this is your wick, and it will burn slowly until all the oil from the sand is soaked up through the cotton. This type of candle will actually allow for hours of light. I have to pee, I said, after we'd made our way down the beach away. Our bellies were full, a feeling we'd soon come to forget for a very extended period of time, a time I refer to as my down-and-out years in the Philippines, and we were going back and forth between wading in the water and walking just where the surf ended against the sand. Don't pee there, Dearly warned as I got ready to spray against an old coconut tree stump a few yards up from the water's breaking point. Why not, I asked. It is home of the Duwende, she said, and I could tell she was serious. Okay, so the Duwende is a magical Filipino dwarf. They are said to live in the jungles, housing in caves, and they burrow underneath old coconut tree stumps. This particular stump, where I was about to pee, did have a hole in it, but my Western logical mind attributed it to erosion. I laughed and peed on the stump anyway. The Duwende, Dearly warned, he plays many tricks. I laughed at her, finding her broken English as adorable then as I still do today. After having been with her for 11 years as of this writing, and then I put my member back in my shorts and turned to walk back to Dearly, who was slowly strolling along the beach. But all of a sudden, the Filipino candle that had been resting securely on my serving tray jumped up, flipped in the air, and went crashing to the ground and shattered into pieces. It looked like it happened in slow motion, but in real time, I'd been in mid-stride and I was unable to stop. When my right foot came down, I sliced the corner of the joint of my big toe where it meets my foot, clean open on the largest piece of the glass from the candle, and blood began spurting out of my foot like water from a hose. "Oh my God," I shouted. Not only was the injury painful from the slicing of the glass, but the glass was hot from the flame and it added to the pain. I'm going to die. Pesti matabaka, Dearly said, which is the sign for F your eyes. I told you that the Wendy plays tricks. You pee his house, he cuts your foot. F my life, I yelled, a phrase that was pretty common in American pop culture when I'd left the States. I'd been wanting the opportunity to use it before it died out, like all pop culture bullshit always does, and thank God for small favors, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity. So perfect, in fact, that I decided to shout it again. F my life. Dearly and I made it back to our hut, me wobbling and Herb propping me up. Once there, I sat in the bathroom, which was nothing more than a tiled section of the small hut with a hole to defecate and urinate into and a smaller hole under a water spigot, which stood as a bathing area. I held a washcloth on my cut and applied pressure, and Dearly left to see if the guard was at the gate. It turned out he was, and both of them returned in just a matter of minutes. Now, if you have read Isle of Kapre, good on you, mate, as our English and Australian friends would say, then you'll recognize this scene. Because, yeah, this whole full-length version of this is in this book. When Dearly and the guard came into the hut, they were both carrying the small leaves of the malunggay tree. I'd eaten these leaves many times in soups, and nearly every Filipino dish I'd ever eaten, but on this night, Dearly and the guard were crushing the leaves up and allowing the juice to drain onto my cut. The instant the juice from the leaves hit my cut, it stopped bleeding, it stopped hurting, and I could almost see it begin to heal. And I would never have the hint of infection as it did heal. It was absolutely amazing. I said these things to Dearly, and the guard both laughed. You are Americano? The guard asked. Oh, I said, which means yes in Visayas. In your country, he began, you take pill for everything. In Philippines, we still use nature, what God gives us. He had a point. In your country, he continued, you cut foot, you go hospital, you get stitches, you get medicine, you get big bill. He and Dearly both laughed at that. Here, he said, you get malunggay, you go on your way. You keep your money if you have it, he said, and they laughed again. They're not wrong. The guard was at our shack for no more than 5 minutes, just long enough to apply ample malunggay juice to my wound and insult my culture repeatedly. You see, that's one thing about life as a white foreigner in the Philippines. The overwhelming majority of the women love you. They fantasize about you. It's their dream to marry a Western man and leave third world poverty behind forever. And anyone who wants to judge them, I would challenge the judge to go without eating for days at a time. And when the judge does eat again, make their meal a chicken neck and a cup of rice. And then go a few more days without eating before repeating the process. And throw 5 or 6 kids in there, and mind you, they're hungry and screaming the whole time as well. It's not about being prostitutes. It's about being hungry. It's not about being loose women. It's about being hungry. It's not about being flirtatious or having low standards when it comes to men. It's about being hungry. Well, and the men, many of them at least, are insanely jealous for aforementioned reasons. Could you imagine being a guy and hearing every female in your life, from your sisters to your mother to the girl you've got a crush on, constantly talking about their fantasy of marrying a white foreigner? An entire book could be written on all of this from this point, but, oh yeah, it was. It's called Isle of Kapre. Have I mentioned it yet? You learn as much about Filipino culture in this book as you do their urban folklore and legend. Anyway, after the guard left and I was back on my feet, well, at least one of them, Dearly and I went out and sat on the small front porch of the hut, she eating leftover chicken and me drinking rot gut Tanduay rum, now straight, only chasing it with water. Sure, the malunggay had killed the pain, but I wanted to make sure the Tanduay would perform well as my second stringer in case the malunggay wore off. And that's when we smelled it, the smell of sweet cigar smoke. It smelled like the smoke of a cherry-flavored Swisher Sweet, something I never saw in the Philippines all the years I was there. It is Kapre, Dearly said, jumping up faster than I'd ever seen her move to this day, well, except the time she stepped on an 8-foot-long cobra when we were hiking in the jungle once, and she ran inside and she shut the door, leaving me on the porch. Come inside, I heard her yell from the other side of the door. The what? I said. Through the door, Dearly reminded me of the Kapre. Sure, I'd heard about it, as well as much of the folklore of the Philippines, but at the time I'd originally heard about it, I hadn't taken any of it seriously enough to store it to memory. Then I heard a twig snap only yards away from the hut, followed by a low growl. I quickly joined Dearly in the hut, now taking this stuff very seriously. Again, as if fully described in Isle of Kapre, the Kapre is a Filipino version of the North American Bigfoot Sasquatch. However, there are a few stark differences. Okay, whereas the North American Bigfoot Sasquatch is a forest dweller, the Kapre, who is said to incessantly smoke sweet-smelling cigars, lives in the top of giant trees. Also, he's interdimensional. You see, the Filipino people believe that there's a portal to another dimension in the tops of the trees where this mystical and mythical creature lives, and he uses this portal to go back and forth between our worlds. Why does he come here, by the way, the Kapre? They're all males, and they come here into our world to kidnap beautiful young Filipino ladies. He then takes them through the portal and enslaves them as part of his harem on the other side of the portal where he lives in a giant stately castle. Think Beauty and the Beast. Now, in the Kapre's defense, once he gets these young maidens to the other side of the veil, they aren't enslaved by a huge, hairy, hideous beast anymore. You see, the Filipinos believe that once back in his own dimension, the Kapre sheds his hide, and alas, he is one hell of a good-looking dude. Anyway, no beautiful young Filipino lady wants to be taken from her family and her friends on this side of the veil, so it is all so horrifying, and inside our little hut that night, Dearly and I didn't sleep a wink. Oh, we tried, but whatever was on the outside of the hut would not allow it. Come on, I said, once in the hut. I'd crawled into bed and gotten underneath the sheet. In the 6 years I'd spent in the Philippines, I never saw a blanket. Hell, they weren't necessary. The temperatures may have dropped to 85 degrees Fahrenheit at night during the 2 rainy seasons, and you were lucky if you could even find a sheet. But on this night, we were in luck. No, she said from somewhere in the hut. She was huddled in a dark corner, as far away from both the door and the one window of the hut as she could get. I looked over at the window, and I saw that Dearly had managed to latch shut the wooden shutters from the inside just before I'd come into the hut, and as I had made the outline of the shutters out of the darkness, they began shaking. Someone or something was outside the hut, shaking the shutters. Instantly, I'd forgotten all the jokes I'd made about the Kapre and the Duwende and all the other mythical creatures of Philippines folklore. I found myself pulling the sheet up and over my head like a kid watching a scary movie, just like back when I'd watched The Exorcist at 4 years old. But this was no movie. This was real. Potentially. Throughout the night, Dearly and I would be disturbed intermittently by either the shaking of the shutters or the smell of sweet cigar smoke. Every time I'd fall asleep, one or the other or both would wake me up, and poor Dearly never even fell asleep at all. You can only imagine our relief when the sun came up the next morning. You see, just like a vampire, the Kapre will never be seen when the sun is up. It's not that the sun could kill him, he just doesn't want to be seen, so he only comes out through his portal under the cover of darkness at night. When day did come, Dearly and I packed our few belongings. Before leaving his shift, the guard actually came down and helped us carry our stuff up to the gate since he knew my foot was injured. That's one thing I'll give the men of the Philippines. They may be insanely jealous of white foreigners for reasons described earlier, but many of them are still kind, do the right thing, and follow the golden rule. As we made our way past the small hut that was used as an office, Dearly told the old woman of our night. The old woman merely shook her head. She said she didn't sleep all night knowing something bad was going to happen, and she was just happy that we were still alive. She begged us not to tell of our experience to anyone because she was afraid that though the events took place at night, the story might hurt her business during the day. We promised her we wouldn't tell a soul, but I kept my fingers crossed behind my back because I knew this story was too good not to be told, and now I've told it in 2 separate books as I've talked about it in several YouTube videos as well. But I wish anyone interested in finding this island the best of luck. It's not even charted on any maps. My attitude about the Kapre and the Duwende and the rest of the Philippines folklore changed after that night, and a couple of years and a few odd jobs later, during my down and out in the Philippines years, I would have enough material by way of actual experience to pen Isle of Kapre, and to date, it is the most haunting book I've ever written. For you see, though poised as fiction, and though much of it is, I know which parts are not. I know which parts are real, and the things to this day cost me sleep at night, especially since there may be other portals and other large humanoid cryptids among us. And there may or may not be one in the woods behind my house on our small homestead here in Virginia. One that is an entry and exit way for, potentially, Bigfoot Sasquatch. The end. So again, guys, Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 16 in the works. If you got a Bigfoot Sasquatch story and you want it shared with the world, send it to us. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. You must give us your permission to share it. We will keep you anonymous upon your request. All books available on Amazon in print and Kindle, or with autographs on print copies from our Etsy store. The links are in the description box below. If you saw anything, make sure to go back and timestamp it, and I will see you for more again soon next time.